And welcome back to another exciting episode of Iron Therapy. I am Dave Palumbo, joined with our RX Muscle psychotherapist, Lesley Timbol. And this is going to be a good topic we're going to be talking about today, Lesley, because, and for some reason, I seem to resonate with most of the topics we have. I think I have every disorder known to man pretty much, or at least at one time have suffered from it. But this is, you called it hypergymnasia, or what is it, exercise anorexia? Is that what they call it?
Yes, absolutely, Dave.
Explain what that is.
So basically, and a lot of athletes actually fit under this category. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what differentiates like an athlete who has it versus an athlete who doesn't. But the main thing about hypergymnasia, or again, the other term for it is anorexia athletica or sports anorexia, is that it's characterized by excessive and compulsive exercise. So now I want to kind of go into how do you define excessive exercise? Right. Because a lot of athletes like myself in prep, I'm training like, let's say 3 times a day. So is that considered excessive exercise?
Probably.
Well, 2 of them are cardio sessions. But again, is it, am I doing it all year round? No, I'm only doing it to prepare for a show. But again, I'm going to actually talk about people in my position who actually do have it versus those who do not.
Okay.
But I just talk a little bit about this.
Before you start, I want to differentiate. Is this someone who just trains like 7 days a week and then never takes a day off because they think they're going to look better? Or are we talking about someone who's exercising excessively to burn off calories that they're eating?
It's more the latter. Okay. And part of that is for a lot of sports, it's important to have a more svelte kind of figure, right, for either appearance purposes. We want to have conditioning as bodybuilders. But in other sports, let's say whether you're in gymnastics, if you're in ballet, if you're a runner, that helps from an aesthetic standpoint, but also a performance standpoint. Because as a runner, we all know that if you're lighter, you can run faster.
I can relate to that. I was 19, 20 years old. I was in college. And all the coaches used to tell me, because I worked out in high school, I wasn't big. I was probably 160 pounds, which at 5'10", whatever I was in high school, was fairly, I was very lean too. So it was kind of a muscular, like 160. And for bodybuilding purposes, no one would say I looked like a freaky bodybuilder. I was ripped. But, for a runner, a long distance runner, I was carrying around extra muscle. And they were always saying, you're too big. You're slowing yourself down. And I did notice that if I lost weight, I got faster. So I got obsessed with running, and I would start doing, not only would I run with the team, I would run at night, like after dinner, to try to burn off extra calories. I would literally starve myself all day, and I would just eat dinner, and then I would like gorge on like carbs at night, like popcorn and like cream of rice and cream of wheat with raisins in it. And I would drink a lot of milk. I didn't even realize it. I was just drank milk because I liked it, but I was probably thank God I was getting my protein from the milk. But I couldn't consume enough calories, even though I would gorge at night while I was studying and watching TV, whatever. But all day I wasn't eating. And then I was running probably 10 miles a day. And little by little, I whittled my weight down to like, the high 130s. Like I think I was down to 139 at one point. And, that was low for me, and I was thin, but I was running real fast. But it got to the point where I started getting hurt. And so I think I went too far with it. So I can relate. And bodybuilding really took me out of that because bodybuilding is the complete opposite mindset. Eat more, train less, grow better. So it was a much healthier, until I started using steroids, it was a much healthier option for me.
Well, you brought up some really good points that actually fit the criteria, Dave. So yes, you do.
Oh, I resonated with me, this topic, believe me. And I'm sure there's people out there watching that it's resonating with them too.
Well, one of the things to your point is, and I'll go into that excessive exercise piece, is that you end up skipping meals because of it. Yeah. So, bodybuilders who, when we eat every 2.5, 3 hours, we stay on schedule. We're not missing meals. We're not missing our training sessions, and we still try to get a life in there. That's okay. But it's when you're, it's basically your exercise becomes your life, and then everything else in your life kind of fits around the exercise. Right. And you push stuff to the side so that you are able to exercise more, and including, and I'm not just talking about social events, but eating, skipping meals is huge, huge.
One summer when I was the worst, and I'm using myself because this way people could relate to the topic a little better. I was running 10 miles a day on your average, 8 to 10 miles a day. Usually try to go for 10, depending on what the weather was or whatever. But, sometimes it was so hot that what I would do is I would run a little less and I would do other things, and I'll explain. So I would get up. I would try to get the run over with early, because if I waited and it hung over my head, it was like a nightmare. But sometimes I ran at like 10 o'clock at night because I just procrastinated the whole day because I was so crazy about it. But I would run, and during the summer when I wasn't working, it was I was off for college. I would then go to the pool. They had a public pool with a big Olympic-sized pool, and I would swim laps to make up for the lack of the running that I could do because it was so hot. And then I would get home after the pool. I'd have a little snack and I'd feel guilty about it. So I would go and ride my bike, and I would ride 10 miles, I don't know, on the 15 miles on the bike. And I was training for a triathlon, why, I have no idea, but I just got to that point where I didn't know what, I was so bored all day that I was just exercising obsessively all day. And I would weigh myself 40 times a day too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to break 140 today. That it was nuts, but you can get caught up in that, absolutely. And I see it in bodybuilders I work with as well. They're eating a lot of food, but then they're exercising and doing so much extra cardio that they actually can't even gain weight because of it.
Well, let me take it one step further when it comes to the bodybuilders, Dave. And I think we touched upon this on a previous episode where, do you lie to your coach for competitors? And, sometimes and I've seen this, where bodybuilders will actually cheat on their diet and do extra cardio thinking that if I ate this, I'll do this amount of cardio and that makes up for it.
Punishment. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing
punishment cardio. Yeah.
But the thing is that will never get you ahead. Even if let's say you ate and you measured the calories and whatever you ate was, let's say, I don't know, 400 calories. And then you did 400 calories. It doesn't equate because your body composition changes.
Yeah. The only person who, Lesley, not to interrupt, but I don't want to forget the story. The only person who was a better torturer of their own body than I was Roman Fritz. Roman Fritz told me a story that when he was a kid, he was also a long distance runner because he wanted to get ripped more than anything. He was a little bit of a heavy kid. And so I think he was in a boarding school, and they had this lake with a path around, a walking path around it. And what he decided, I don't know where he read this, but he's going to only eat apples. So he would just eat apples all day long. He'd eat nothing else but apples. And he would run around the track, 10, 12 miles, just to burn calories. And he was obviously getting leaner. And people were like, what the heck are you doing? And all they see him doing is eating apples all day long. So everyone's like, this is some kind of secret diet he's got. It was really the over-exercising that he was doing. He said, and at one point, it got to the point where he was so low in energy because he was eating no protein, and it was, his blood sugar was probably up and down. He actually passed out while he was running around that track and dropped. Someone found him or something. And then he realized he was going to kill himself what he was doing. But that was the only person that was more disciplined than me at doing something completely insane like that.
Did he continue doing it afterwards?
No, he stopped because he realized because he really wanted to be a bodybuilder, but he wanted to be a ripped bodybuilder, and he didn't even know about diet. So he thought, he read somewhere that if you eat apples, you're going to lose weight. So he just was eating 25 apples a day. but we're laughing, but people do crazy shit.
Oh, I know.
Online, eat only this food, or eat carrots, or some crazy cockamamie, thing, and they'll try it because they'll do anything. It sounds kooky enough that to give it a shot.
Well, it also gets to the point with people with hypergymnasia that they don't working out anymore. They do it because it's compulsion. They feel like they have to. They get to the point where initially they'll like the exercise, but eventually they're just going through the motions. And again, like you said, you get into this very narrow mindset. I have to do it. You don't even think about why. Yep. It's just this compulsion. I have to do this, but there's no enjoyment out of working out at one point.
When I switched from running to bodybuilding initially, I was doing the same thing. I was going to the gym and I was working out for 3 hours at the gym, thinking that I had to do 30 sets per body part, and it was just taking forever. And you're right, I started hating it. The difference between me and I think a lot of people that were doing this was I was doing it and I was doing it because I thought that was the way to look better.
Right.
I didn't know. So once I started reading, books about bodybuilding and talking to bodybuilders and seeing that no one trained that long, and I wasn't eating enough food and I wasn't taking enough rest days. And I started to listen a little. It took me a while, but once I started adopting some of these things and adding protein shakes, which was increasing my food intake a lot, I realized I wasn't getting fat. I was actually putting muscle on and I was looking better. And I actually felt better. I had more energy. I wasn't always run down, because the runner's mentality was, if you're not totally exhausted all the time, then you probably didn't train. You didn't run hard enough, or you didn't run long enough, or whatever the case may be. So it was a different mentality that I had to kind of, luckily I fixed myself, but a lot of people, Lesley, get lost and they really can't fix themselves. What could you advise people to do if they're caught in this cycle, this trap? Because you're right, it becomes a trap. It's not even fun anymore.
No, and the thing is that, it's not just, it's not fun. They get injured or they get sick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it ends up being, and then the thing is that their worth, they feel that, their self-esteem is tied into their performance and how they look. And that's a very dangerous road to go down, because as we all know, at some point, no matter what sport you're in, at some point you're going to retire from that sport. Right. Even if you don't get injured, you will stop. So if you stop, does that mean your self-esteem stops? And that's why it's really important to have self-esteem in addition, to have other sources for your self-esteem. But, as far as what you were saying about what people can do about it, is the first step is realizing it's a problem. Because some people say, well, no, it's not a problem. I have it under control. And so what we call that is denial. Mm-hmm. And part of that is also the pressures, whether it's from coaches, whether it's from peers. Mm-hmm. Social media is huge. Social media is a huge pressure for people. Also, whether it's, let's say you do a post and people are like yapping on the post about, you're not looking conditioned enough or whatever. But it's also, what we tell ourselves. We have this little negative person. We all, I think we all have that negative critique voice in our head saying we're not small, or like, we want to be big, but we want to be conditioned. Right. And the thing is that in order to be conditioned, at some point, you're going to look flat before you start filling out, but we can get in our heads, and then that can go down a rabbit hole into itself. But it's really important, Dave, to be able to say, is this a problem? Mm. And again, I'm not talking about 3 weeks out from a show when you stop enjoying yourself.
During regular time. Yeah.
So let me just quickly, before I talk furthermore about steps about treatment, is excessive exercise. How do you define that? And that's more than 2 hard training sessions per day. Mm-hmm. So if you do, let's say, a morning, you do, back in the morning or something like that. And then in the evening, you do biceps. That's okay. And throw in a cardio session. That's okay.
Yeah, as long as you're not doing 2 hours each time.
No, not 2 hours each time. No.
I always tell people I like to do 1 session. I don't really recover well from 2 sessions because I want to have a full 24 hours. But I can understand if people like to break it up and they have the time. If your normal workout would take 1 hour and 20 minutes, and you did, and instead of doing 1 hour and 20 minutes straight, you went and did 50 minutes in the morning, and then you did the rest of it at night, just break it up, because you're going to do cardio or something like that. That's not, I think that would be considered okay. But when you start expanding these workouts to be, the morning is an hour and a half, and then at night you're there another 2 hours. I mean, that can start getting, I'm not talking about cardio now. That
right.
Crazy,
We're talking strictly training, weight training sessions. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I understand people need to also break up their training sessions because maybe they don't have time because of their work schedule. So that's why they have to do part of it in the morning for a shorter period of time, and then the evening they finish it up.
Some people like to do chest in the morning, and then they like to go and take a nap, and then they come back at night, and then they're ready to go with the second body part, whatever it be, like chest, triceps or biceps. I understand that not many people have the scheduling to do that, but some top level bodybuilders who don't work and that's what they do for a living, they can do that on a regular basis. And I know it was really big back when guys used to go out to Venice, California, and they were living out there because everyone wanted to go to Gold's, and they wanted to go in the morning and they wanted to go at night because there were different crews there and everyone wanted to be seen. So I think that developed more because of that whole Gold's gym scene. Whereas nowadays, no one cares. Everyone has their own gym in their own hometown, and they don't really care. They go once a day. They don't want to be at the gym twice a day, unless they're doing cardio for a show. it's a pain in the ass, almost. So they can do more productive stuff at home by, doing social media or whatever else they're doing for themselves. So I think it was more relevant back in the 80s and 90s, but there are still some people that like to do 2 workouts a day.
And again, really what it comes down is the quantity of time. It's not necessarily the number of times in the day.
Right.
Like I said, for the 2 training sessions, that's not a problem. But to your point, it's not going to be 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening.
Don't you think, though, that sometimes when you go twice a day, it's almost like your day is too dependent on your workouts? You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to schedule your day. So it's like, I'm always worried about when my next work. Am I eating enough food? Am I getting my pre-workout meal in? It's almost like too much sometimes. It could burden people and stress them out if they have to go to the gym twice a day, 5 days a week or something like that, or 6 days a week. That's a lot of gym time, to be driving to the gym and training constantly. I almost think that sometimes it's a mental relief if you can give yourself do it in one session, you know what I mean? And let your brain rest. If you got to do cardio, that's a different story. You can do that at home. You can walk outside and do cardio. You don't necessarily have to go to the gym, because that whole getting in the car and going to the gym, especially if you have a real job and you have some family, responsibilities, it can become burdensome. And when it becomes burdensome, that sometimes takes the joy out of it too.
And you can get burnout that way too.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about everybody. I mean, my personal thing is that when I train at the gym, it's just once a day. I don't go twice a day for training sessions.
Yeah.
But to your point, cardio is a different story, but that's a different kind of training stimulus.
Yeah, it's less. You don't need to have your mind in cardio very much. It's like a mindless thing. You can watch your phone, you can watch videos, you can kind of relax.
I'll watch bodybuilding podcasts, Dave.
Right, I'm saying, but that you can kind of zone out when you're doing cardio, whereas with weight training, there's a lot of mental focus.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, and if there's not mental focus, and if you're getting too distracted in your training, that's a problem, because you're not making that proper mind-muscle connection, and then you're losing all the gains from that exercise.
Yeah, and if you're doing a 3-hour workout in the gym, there's no way you're putting your focus 100% into every set you're doing. It's just too many sets. You're kind of just going through the motions because maybe you think you need to do that much exercise in order, like you said, to look a certain way, lean-wise, or maybe in your mind you've convinced yourself that the more sets you do, the bigger you're going to get. Because some people have that mentality too. More is better. So that's when usually that should set off the red light, like something's not right here. And that, what I think the best solution is, Lesley, and some people might need professional help, but get a coach. Get a coach who's going to tell you you're nuts. I've told people before, I'm like, what are you doing in the gym twice a day for 3 hours? I said, are you crazy? You want to get big? You're overtrained, and I've straightened people out and I've fixed them real quick. Now, some people just have like a mental disorder, where they're just, you could tell them from now until Timbol, to the end of days, they're going to still be convinced in their mind that they need to do that training in order to look a certain way.
Well, I was going to say, that's part of what, one of the things that I do, or people like myself do. What we do is it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And this basically, it just helps people, identify what their triggers are. Now, it's going to be different from person to person, but when you find out what the underlying triggers are, you can develop that awareness and then also develop some healthy coping skills in the counseling. But to your point, another approach is getting, a sports nutritionist to help balance between that exercise and caloric intake. Because if you don't know what you're doing, go to an expert. Also learning mindfulness meditation, because this can help with self-esteem and stress. A lot of people don't know how to manage their stress properly. And I'm not saying you can't use sports as a way to alleviate stress, but if that's the only way you're alleviating stress, that's a problem. It's learning how to be able to, like I said, have an identity and learn some stress management techniques outside of training.
I break down the personalities that are excessive into 2 personality, subtypes. This is how I do it when I help people. And I don't know if this is true or not. I just do it. I call it the anorexic mentality and the bulimic mentality. The bulimic mentality is, I'm out of control. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to gorge at food. I'm going to throw up, right? That's what a bulimic really does, right? Or they eat a ton of food and they over-exercise, right? So most of those people really want to know what the right formula is to fix what they're doing, because they know what they're doing is not right and it's excessive, but they don't really know how to fix it. And if you put them on a regimented program and you give them structure, a lot of times they're fine with that. With the anorexic mentality, it's like those people are such control freaks already that they won't listen to anyone. They think they have the right way, and they just think they have to work harder at it.
Right.
And so you could tell them from now until tomorrow, that hey, you're not eating enough food, you're training too much, and that's why you're so hungry. And you give them all try to set them up on a program, and they just can't stick to it because they think they know better.
And actually, you brought something up. I want to actually differentiate really quickly the difference between sports anorexia and anorexia. Okay. So when someone has anorexia, it's very body image focused. When someone has sports anorexia, it's performance focused. So again, what can I do to enhance my performance? Again, regardless of the sport, that's the difference with those two words, the sports anorexia and the anorexia.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. So they're not really related. They're just using it as a comparison, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So given what I told you, the two subtypes, I mean, have you noticed there are two groups like that? Some people that are very responsive to like your help, say, in therapy, and then others that are very resistant to your help because of the fact that they think that they're like in control of what's going on?
I would add a third subtype to that. I agree that there's two. Ones that think that they know everything and ones that are open to suggestion. Mm-hmm. The third subtype I have are that they claim that they're open to suggestion from a cognitive level. So from a thinking level, they understand the importance of the mental health component. But when it comes to applying it to their own lives, and I'm specifically talking about some bodybuilders out there, that they talk about how important mental health is, because, when we're talking about competing, yes, there's a physical component, but it's more mental than anything. Mm-hmm. That's why when you talk about the Olympics, if you talk to any Olympic athlete, they'll tell you it's more mental than it is physical. That's why they have mental game coaches. Right. But how many bodybuilders, like I said, have mental game coaches?
Right.
And it's they claim it, they talk about it, but not many have actually followed through and gotten a mental game coach. Right. So it's kind of they know it's important, but they don't actually execute. There are more bodybuilders that are more caring about what's the proper drug protocol out there than working on this. And this is more important than any drug protocol, I'll tell you that.
Now, some people are very disciplined and they do very well with instructions. A coach tells them this is what you're going to eat, this is how you're going to train, this is what the cardio you're going to do, and they have no trouble following it. And those people get very good results, I find.
They do, absolutely. You follow the plan, right? And that's the thing. A lot of people will follow the plan, but then people like this, they'll do the extra. They'll say, so if you say, Dave, because you coach a lot of people. Yeah. If you tell someone to do 45 minutes of cardio and they do 45 minutes of cardio and after a few days, their weight doesn't drop.
Right.
Okay, they're going to up it to an hour. And they don't even tell you. They're just going to do an hour. And then it increases.
3 days later because they're doing too much cardio, right?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden their knees are going to start hurting. You're like, because their joints are sore.
Yeah, I got to a point with my running. And this is probably one of the ways I got out of the running whole thing. I was starting to hate it too. I was really good at it. I was, at a Division III level in college. I was winning, races and stuff like that, which was good because I didn't know anything about drugs. I didn't know there was no performance enhancing drug option for me because I didn't even know what they were. Man. I didn't even know people used them. So this was all just my willpower, doing it. It got to a point where I was running so much and doing things in such excess and never taking a day off that I was getting such pains in the bottom of my feet. I had plantar fasciitis, which was first it started where it only hurt when I walked. But if I ran, it didn't hurt. So I was like, all right, I'll keep running, 10 miles a day. And that doesn't matter. I'll just hobble around during the day. And then it got to the point where even when I was running, it was hurting. And I just said, and I quit. I went to the coach. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. This was in my senior year. I said, I don't want to be on the team. I decided I don't want to be a runner anymore. He's like, you got one season left. I said, nah, I don't want to do it. And I literally quit, which is something I don't normally do, but I hated it so much. And of course I took off like 2 weeks after I quit. Cause I was like, whew, thank God I don't have to do this anymore. Right. And everything healed up, of course. And then I felt good and I was back to running again. And I was running at even better because I had taken off 2 weeks and I had really healed up. I didn't even put two and two together that if I would have just chilled out a little bit and listened to the coach and taken days off, that I wasn't at that stage. I was so emotionally immature at that stage. And so then I just said, you know what? I'm going to start working out again because I looked so skinny. I was like emaciated from the running, and I started working out, and then I got bit by you know how that goes. You get bit by the bodybuilding bug. I got consumed with all the bodybuilding magazines, and I started growing and eating more food, and I saw the muscle coming, and I wasn't getting fat. And I was like, what a dummy I was doing all this running, thinking I'm going to stay lean. I'm actually leaner now. I'm eating more, and I'm not even running, or I'm only running like 20 minutes, at this point. So sometimes you have to learn by example, or maybe go to that point where you've overdone it and then take a step back and analyze what you're doing. It's hard to take someone out of that. Once they're in that zone of overtraining, it's hard to pull them out of there until something happens, to them that they actually have to are forced to stop, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we're stubborn creatures, and then, but being stubborn actually helps us, do what we need to do. The problem is that we don't respect our boundaries, and sometimes we don't listen to our bodies, and I'm certainly guilty of that. Just a few seconds, Dave. There's a guy named Joe Zapata. He said he just gave $4.99. Thanks, Joe, for bringing great content. And guys, if you guys have other suggestions for Dave and I in future topics, put it in the chat or put it in the comments below, because I definitely address the comments after the show.
Someone said we should get Roman Fritz on. Yeah, we should probably let's get Roman on next week. I'll ask him. He'll love to do it, and he could talk. I'm telling you, he tells you this Apple story. You're because he's German. He's like so straight laced. He tells that Apple story. It's really funny. But he was doing crazy stuff too. And believe me, when we tell the reason I tell my stories and open myself up and be so transparent is because I know other people do the same crazy kooky shit too. Yeah. And I want you to understand that there's nothing wrong with that as long as you don't continue to do it. You have to identify it when it happens, and then either change it yourself, find a coach, find a therapist like Lesley, someone who could help walk you through it, because people like us have gone through it. It's like, when you think your parents don't know what's going on, and you're like, oh, they don't understand me. Meanwhile, they went through the exact same thing you went through when they were kids. They understand better than anyone, but it's hard to listen to someone you're that close to. And so if you get a coach like myself, or you get a therapist like Lesley, and they can help work through whatever is going on, whether you're over-exercising, you're under-eating, whatever you think you're doing that's going to help you achieve something, and it's really not helping you, it's actually you're going in the opposite direction, you need someone to help set you straight. And sometimes there's nothing wrong for asking for help. Sometimes we need a little help in life. And there have been plenty of angels in my life, I know, and I'm sure you can say the same thing for yourself, Lesley, that have guided me and changed the course of where I was heading, because they saw that I was doing something destructive and not constructive.
Yeah, and the thing is, I appreciate you putting yourself out there, Dave, and I put myself out there too, and my mental iron, certainly after this, I do my YouTube channel, and I'm certainly open there as well. We're using ourselves as examples, guys, to let you guys that you're not alone. It's not just us giving you strategies, because we want to bring attention to these type of issues to say, yeah, you're not alone, but here's what you can do about it. Because sometimes we're just thought, okay, this is the way it is. Okay, maybe the way it is, but it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Right. And it's learning what those other choices are. And to your point, getting different types of coaches is a solution for sure.
And sometimes you just have to, you have to take a look at yourself and say, have I gone too far? I'm always doing these experiments with checking blood sugars and trying to control blood sugars, and I'll go on lower carb. Like I went on this, like the last maybe 6 weeks, I've been doing really low carbs to try to see how my fasting blood sugars are affected in the morning, so that I can help other people. So I have a lot of clients with like high blood sugars in the morning, and I got on the scale the other day, and I had lost like a good 6 pounds. And I was pretty stable. I was like at 190 for a while, like really holding pretty good there. And I was happy and I'm like, holy mackerel, I lost a lot of weight just from cutting carbs, because I have a very fast metabolism. So, and I didn't even notice it, but I just happened to say, you know what, I got to evaluate myself. So, it doesn't matter for me because I'm not competing, but there is I don't want to go too low and I don't want to be too high, but there's a certain sweet spot that my body looks good and feels good at. And I started feeling a little weaker in the gym, and I was wondering why I wasn't able to lift as heavy. And I had been in other words, my diet had become too restrictive. So now I added back more food. So believe me, you could get lost in different little things. Sometimes you see a detox online and you get obsessed with it and you start following a detox. And before you know it, you're losing muscle, and you don't even realize it. You feel good, but you're not necessarily doing something to help what your goals are. And if your goals are to put muscle on and lean out, obviously losing muscle is not what you want to do. So it's good to evaluate yourself every so often and say, hey, am I achieving what I want, or am I going in the wrong direction? So that's just called being honest with yourself. And we're all very dishonest with ourselves a lot of times. And that's why sometimes we get sick and we're not able to identify it. And so what you have to do is you have to be honest with yourself. And if people give you feedback I'm not talking about idiots online. I'm talking about like people who care about you. If they say something like, hey, you're looking a little pale, or you should, when was your last time you went for blood work or something like that? Or, sometimes that's their way of saying something doesn't look right. You better get checked out. Or they might say, you're exercising an awful lot. You're at the gym for 3 hours a day. Maybe you should think about, cutting back a little bit. A lot of people get insulted when someone says that to them. But if someone's saying it to you and they are someone that is close to you, there might be some truth to the fact that maybe you're overdoing it. So,
shout out to M New, by the way. Thank you for that nice comment.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up now. If you want to ask Lesley more questions one-on-one, head over to her YouTube channel now. She's going to be going live. For now, I want to thank you guys for stopping by. Lesley, thank you for this insightful show, because I think this is a topic that does resonate within our community and probably the whole fitness community at that.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
All right. And as always, guys, we will see you again next week. I'm Dave Palumbo with Lesley Timbol for another installment of Iron Therapy.